In the dead of night, a few people got lost in the wild. Unexpectedly, an unexpected incident occurred suddenly the next second. After the crowd screamed, they quickly shot at the devil, but all the bullets were blocked by the innocent girl. The devil was still hiding behind her, laughing loudly. After they emptied their magazines, the devil stuck his hand into the humans' heads and played with the corpses like marionettes.
Hello, Kelly. Do you love me? 'Cause I love you.
The two finally loaded their bullets, only to be blocked again by the devil using a corpse. Then the devil flung the corpse onto the two of them. The devil locked his eyes on the last blonde bombshell. The blonde bombshell is probably doomed. What exactly is this devil's origin, and why is it massacring humans? Legend has it that in ancient times, there was such a book. Its cover was made of human skin. The author wrote the text inside with human blood, and sealed hundreds of kinds of demons in the book. These demons are all very vicious. Just one of them can throw the world into chaos. The name of the book is the Book of the Dead. Originally, the Book of the Dead had vanished without a trace in the human world, but it was discovered by a tomb robber, and by a twist of fate, one of the demons inside was released, killing the tomb robber's relatives and friends. Later, a man named Ash, in order to take his girlfriend to the wild for excitement, went with his friends to find the tomb robber's house, deep in the mountains and forests. And they found this Book of the Dead in the basement. The ending is predictable, but after all, as the main character, Ash finally defeated the devil at the cost of one hand, but his girlfriend lost her life. He knew all this was caused by the book, so he tried to tear it with his hands, drown it in water, and even burn it with fire, but he couldn't destroy it at all. So he kept the book on his person to prevent further accidents. Soon 30 years passed, and the thing Ash feared the most still happened. He got high on drugs with a prostitute at home, and accidentally read the incantation in the Book of the Dead, releasing a demon. After killing the prostitute, the demon also killed Ash's neighbor, his boss, and the relatives of his colleague Lacey. Lacey was overwhelmed with grief, so he decided to take the initiative to get involved. Kelly, Lacey's girlfriend, also had her parents killed by the devil. To avenge her parents on the devil, she also chose to join the two of them. The three thus formed an exorcism team, and swore to defeat the devil that had escaped the seal once again. Learning that a bookstore owner had extensive knowledge of ancient texts, the group went to the owner's store, hoping he could help translate the incantations in the book, but the records were very vague, and the owner could do nothing about it. Luckily, Ash asked the owner to read the incantation again, summoning a second devil. Their plan was to let one devil kill the other. Originally, everything was going smoothly, but then policewoman Mary suddenly appeared here. The faceless demon that had just been summoned was very bloody and brutal. It controlled shards of glass and killed the owner. In the nick of time, Kelly grabbed the Book of the Dead and hit the faceless demon with it. Unexpectedly, the big mouth on the Book of the Dead swallowed and absorbed the devil on the spot. Everything then returned to calm, except for the owner's body on the ground. No one else was injured. Policewoman Mary planned to arrest Ash and bring him to justice, because she thought Ash was a serial killer. In fact, all the people Ash had killed were those possessed by the devil. Furthermore, he only fought back out of necessity when facing mortal danger. But Mary didn't buy this at all, and insisted that Ash was the killer. With no other choice, Ash had to use force to handcuff Mary here. He then led the group to Lacey's uncle's house, because Lacey's uncle was a professional exorcist. But as soon as Ash and the others left, the bookstore owner came back to life as a zombie. Because he had already been possessed by the devil, he kept approaching Mary. The latter's hands were cuffed, and she couldn't run even if she wanted to. In the nick of time, a girl in a leather jacket appeared. She picked up a wooden stick and pinned the owner to the side. Mary asked the girl who she really was. Only then did the girl speak, claiming her name was Ruby, and that she was the descendant of the tomb robber who had stolen the Book of the Dead. Decades ago, Ash had summoned a demon using the Book of the Dead. Her parents and sisters had all been killed by the demon. Now she stood on the same side as Mary, with the same goal of catching Ash. Mary immediately formed a team with Ruby to capture Ash. While Ash and his group were driving to Lacey's uncle's house, Kelly suddenly felt dizzy and vomited non-stop. She thought she had suffered a concussion from being thrown while fighting the faceless demon earlier, and that it shouldn't be a big deal. The group continued on their way, but before they reached their destination, the devil caught up. The three stepped on the gas, and finally caught sight of the uncle's house. Because there were special exorcism talismans made by the uncle at the manor gate, the devil couldn't step inside even an inch, and had to leave first. The three found Lacey's uncle and explained their purpose. The uncle lived up to his reputation as a professional exorcist. With just one glance, he could tell that Ash had lost his right hand because of a demon. Upon hearing this, the leading man immediately begged the uncle to help him. He was willing to do anything, as long as the demon could be sealed again. The uncle waved his hand and told Ash to follow him inside the house. First, he wanted to test Ash's inner self. The uncle took out a jar of insects, poured some out, crushed them into a liquid, and told Ash to drink it in one gulp. Then the uncle blew a puff of white smoke onto Ash's face, and chanted an incantation that no one could understand. After this series of actions, Ash's mind gradually began to wander. Fragments and experiences from his life kept flashing back in his mind. There were cartoons he had watched as a child, as well as glamour magazines he had seen as an adult. There were also some trivial life events that he couldn't even remember. Soon, he saw the beginning of what had happened 30 years ago. He and his girlfriend had been having fun in that wooden cabin when they accidentally released the demon. To Ash's surprise, he was suddenly buried in a pit. Several zombies surrounded him. He wanted to shoot the zombies but didn't know where to aim, because his eyes had been sewn shut with thread, and he couldn't see at all. Just then, the uncle's voice came from somewhere unknown. He told Ash that even without using his eyes, he could aim at the enemy. He just needed to follow the direction of his heart. Moreover, Ash was in his own dream, and he was the strongest one there. After hearing the uncle's reminder, Ash relaxed and prepared to follow his intuition. But all the zombies around him suddenly disappeared, and he found himself in Jackson City. It was the original destination he and his girlfriend had planned to go to decades ago. There was no heavy life pressure here, and no one looked at you differently. They could do whatever they wanted every day. But in search of excitement, they had driven to that wooden cabin, but an accident was about to happen. At this point, Ash suddenly found that his severed hand had grown back. He suddenly thought that staying in this dream forever might not be a bad thing. He could drink beer and go fishing every day. Meanwhile, in reality, Lacey was making a mechanical prosthetic hand for Ash, because the wooden one had been taken away by Mary. On the other side, Kelly's headache still hadn't subsided. In fact, she didn't have a concussion. She had been invaded by the faceless demon. The faceless demon hadn't been devoured by the Book of the Dead. Instead, it had entered Kelly's body, until her consciousness was completely taken over by the faceless demon. First, she suddenly attacked Lacey, then went to find the uncle, and told him that Lacey needed help. After sending the uncle away, the faceless demon prepared to extend its deadly hand to Ash, who was still in his dream. Ash's dream suddenly fell apart. He fell from Jackson City into that small cabin from 30 years ago. Then the scene shifted again, and he arrived at the bookstore, where the faceless demon had been summoned. Finally, he even ended up in a supermarket warehouse. A doll was also there, interfering with him. The faceless demon stared at him menacingly here. Ash didn't have time to react at all, and quickly fell at a disadvantage. It seemed that the faceless demon was about to kill Ash and take over his body, but Ash's pet lizard suddenly appeared beside him. It reminded Ash that this was his own dream, and that he was omnipotent here. Ash also came to his senses, and in the blink of an eye, he countered the faceless demon and crushed the doll's head. Then he grabbed the faceless demon by the neck from a distance. In the real world, Ash also did the same action. Although he still hadn't woken up, Kelly, who was being choked, screamed for help. The uncle heard the commotion and hurried back, telling Ash to let go of Kelly and stop what he was doing. Right after that, the uncle and Lacey rescued Kelly together. Seeing that the uncle-nephew pair were on her side, the woman started tricking them. She claimed that Ash had been possessed by the faceless demon, and that killing him quickly was the right thing to do. As a professional exorcist, the uncle could tell that something was wrong with Ash at a glance. Even if Kelly hadn't said anything, Ash had slurred speech and was in a daze, constantly saying some unintelligible words. The uncle told Lacey to prepare some tools, including boiling water, a chicken, and a sharp blade. All of these are essential for the exorcism ritual. Lacey and Kelly went back to the RV. Kelly suddenly started acting coquettishly, and tried to get Lacey to smoke with her. In fact, her real intention was to shoot him on the spot, when Lacey got high from smoking. But Lacey refused all the time. But the faceless demon inside Kelly flew into a rage in an instant and tried to kill Lacey right then and there. On the other side, the uncle was still chanting incantations here. Ash looked at him, feeling helpless. Luckily, Ash managed to break free from the rope that was tying his mouth. Only then did he tell the uncle about Lacey's dangerous situation. The top priority was to go rescue Lacey immediately. Suddenly, a gunshot rang out from the direction of the RV. The two didn't dare to delay and hurried over to check. Lacey was holding a gun and aiming at Kelly. Only then did the uncle realize that Ash wasn't the one who was possessed. Soon, the uncle began to perform an exorcism on Kelly. He tried all kinds of methods, performing a shamanic ritual and making Kelly eat leeches. None of these worked. The uncle prepared to use his last trump card, holy water. He took out a towel with talismans drawn on it, and spread it over Kelly's face. Then he unscrewed the jar containing holy water, and kept pouring it onto Kelly's face. The uncle worked for a long time, but the faceless demon just refused to submit. The uncle was so anxious that he wanted to reach in and pull the faceless demon out of Kelly's body with his own hands. Lacey knew the uncle had already done his best, but he really couldn't bear to see Kelly suffer like this. To save Kelly, Lacey ran forward and shouted at her, telling the faceless demon to leave Kelly's body and possess him voluntarily. Anyone who has watched the Exorcism series knows that there's a world of difference between voluntary possession and involuntary possession, and the difference in power is vast. But this was just Lacey's delay tactic. Taking advantage of the moment the faceless demon emerged from Kelly's body, Ash raised his gun and fired. Unexpectedly, the faceless demon moved too fast, constantly changing positions. Ash almost ran out of bullets but still didn't hit it. In a fit of rage, the faceless demon killed the uncle. Ash suddenly remembered the reminder the uncle had given him earlier. When fighting demons, using one's heart is more accurate than using one's eyes. So Ash held his breath and concentrated, predicting the demon's movement in advance. Then he fired a shot backward, and blew off the faceless demon's head. Later, the group held a cremation for Lacey's uncle. The uncle had been in the exorcism business for many years. He had gone through countless big and small incidents, but in the end, he still died on the front line of exorcism. At this point, the uncle's amulet fell out of the fire. Lacey put it on his body, then took out the new mechanical hand. Ash was also very satisfied with the new prosthetic limb. The three then continued their journey of killing demons. Before long, Ruby and Mary caught up to the uncle's house. But how did they know the three's whereabouts? It turned out that Ash's hand, which had been cut off 30 years ago, had been possessed by a demon and had been alive ever since. Even today, it was still on its way to find Ash. The two had followed this severed hand to find their way here. They went inside the manor to check, and found that Ash and his group must have just left. At that very moment, the devil also showed up. It passed through the forest, entered the manor, and possessed the uncle's corpse. It staggered toward Mary. The latter didn't think twice, drew her gun and fired, but the bullets seemed to have no effect. When Ruby saw this, she grabbed a scythe and swung at it. At this point, the skeleton suddenly spoke. It claimed that Ruby was a traitor, and that it would never let her get the Book of the Dead. Immediately after, the skeleton even grabbed Ruby and threw her into the fire. Why the skeleton called Ruby a traitor will be explained later. This is a major piece of foreshadowing. Mary hurried over to check, and found Ruby buried under the fire. But she didn't have time to grieve, for when she turned around, she saw Ash and the others who had just arrived at the foot of the mountain. Mary hurriedly got in her car and chased after them. On the other side, Ash and his group arrived at a restaurant, and planned to rest here. They discussed their next plan while eating. Ash had learned in his previous dream that to solve the problem completely, they must return to the place where everything started, that is, the small cabin from 30 years ago. Just then, Mary arrived near the restaurant. After observing through binoculars, she confirmed that Ash and his group were inside the restaurant, so she called the sheriff, and told him to come quickly to help her arrest them. Ash and the other two had eaten and drunk their fill, and were discussing who would go pay the bill. As the soul of the team, Ash volunteered. After Lacey and Kelly left, he tried to seduce the landlady, and even said he could pay the bill with his body in the bathroom, but the landlady ignored him. Ash waited for the landlady for a long time, but didn't see her. Instead, he was met by Mary, who had come to arrest him. Even though Ash was missing a hand, he still knocked the pistol out of the policewoman's hand, and took control of her hands. Ash fell to the ground. Just then, the sheriff also arrived. The two of them were just about to take Ash back to the police station, but the devil also caught up, and possessed the sheriff and the landlady, and beat Ash and Mary into a mess. Lacey and Kelly heard the noise and hurried in to deliver equipment. After taking the chainsaw and the shotgun, Ash transformed into a demon hunter again, and immediately blew off the sheriff's head. Kelly wasn't to be outdone. By now, Mary finally realized that Ash hadn't been lying earlier. All the people he had killed were those possessed by demons, and his actions were completely legitimate. Ash tried to recruit Mary to join the team. Obviously, it was Mary's agile skills he valued, not her hot figure. Having learned the whole story, Mary gladly accepted. The group then drove toward a militia camp. Here's an explanation for everyone: militias in the US are worlds apart from those in old China. Ours were for defending the country and protecting our homes, but American militias are more for self-protection, to prevent sneak attacks from the government. Most of them act purely out of self-interest. Ash's friend Mike was in the militia camp. His purpose for this trip was to get some guns and ammunition from Mike, as they had very little equipment left. But to their surprise, as soon as they arrived, they saw corpses all over the ground and blood splattered everywhere. When they reached the militia camp, they learned from Jerry that not long ago, Mike had gone crazy after returning to the camp. His strength had multiplied several times, and he had launched indiscriminate attacks on everyone. Upon hearing this, Ash immediately knew Mike had been possessed by the devil, so the group began to discuss a plan. But unexpectedly, a young man recognized Mary. Jerry was immediately displeased. "We trusted you so much, yet you brought a cop to arrest us." He quickly joined forces with other militiamen to conduct a harsh interrogation of the main group. Ash and Mary seized the opportunity and took off running, barely escaping being hit by bullets. They were then thrown into a bomb shelter, and Mike was locked inside too. Lacey and Kelly had run ahead and narrowly escaped, but the militiamen split up into multiple groups and eventually caught them. Just as they were about to take the two back to the camp, they were suddenly attacked by a group of militiamen possessed by demons. Lacey and Kelly would never let this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity slip away. They seized a car and rushed toward the main camp. Later, they held Jerry and the others at gunpoint and forced them to surrender on the spot. On the other side, Mike in the bomb shelter was waving his claws aggressively at Ash and Mary. It's an unchanging rule that villains always die because they talk too much. In the end, Ash and Mary killed Mike together. Having gone through so much in just one day, the impression each had of the other had changed dramatically. After coming out, Ash told everyone that this journey was very dangerous, and that over time, he had come to see them as family, who had gone through life and death together. Without hesitation, the three expressed their willingness to follow Ash. Lacey, Kelly, and Mary walked ahead. By the time they realized one person was missing, Ash had already run away without a trace. It turned out that Ash had sneaked away quietly to prevent his partners from being endangered because of him. At Uncle Lacey's manor, a hand suddenly lifted itself from the ashes. In fact, Ruby hadn't died at all, and her skin was as good as new. Later, Ruby found a change of clothes, got in her previous car, stepped on the gas, and hit the road. The severed hand had already reached that wooden cabin. Right after that, Ash followed closely behind, learning from past experiences. Ash had equipped himself with a chainsaw and a shotgun in advance to avoid any mishaps at critical moments. The sun was setting in the west. As Ash reached the door and was about to enter, he heard a strange sound behind him. When he saw it was Mary, Ash finally relaxed. It turned out that the policewoman and the others had been following Ash all along, as they were worried about him. They had split up to search earlier, though, and Mary was the first to find this place. The two then walked into the house. Ash couldn't help but sigh. 30 years had passed, but the place still looked exactly as it was when he left. There was a light bulb that had been on for 30 years, a tape recorder still running, and even the refrigerator was still working normally. Kelly and Lacey had lost their way in the forest. No matter which direction they walked, they always ended up back where they started. Luckily for them, they ran into 3 hikers who were traveling in the area. The man leading the group, who was carrying a backpack, said they had seen a dilapidated wooden cabin and pointed out its general direction to Kelly and Lacey. Ash went to the tool shed to find a stick to pry open the basement door. After finding a suitable tool, he was about to leave when the door suddenly closed by itself. The skull on the shelf actually transformed back into the way it looked before death. It was Ash's girlfriend from 30 years ago. His ex-girlfriend begged him not to leave her, even though she only had a head left. She said she could still satisfy Ash's needs. On the other side, Mary was wandering around the wooden cabin. Just then, Ash walked back in. He showered the policewoman with sweet talk to cheer her up, then poured out his heart to her. Mary gladly kissed the leading man. Unexpectedly, she suddenly saw Ash's original severed hand. Mary immediately realized that the person in front of her wasn't the real Ash, but an illusion created by the severed hand. Mary immediately chopped off the hand. To make sure it was completely dead, the policewoman chopped it into 3 pieces. The fake Ash, enraged to see its original form killed, slashed Mary's shoulder with a knife. Mary tried her best to escape, but was suddenly affected by an invisible force, and fell onto a deer antler nearby. At the same time, in the tool shed, the rejected ex-girlfriend angrily used her mind to make various objects in the room attack Ash. Ash's mechanical hand was accidentally caught in a bear trap. When he finally pulled hard, The mechanical hand was torn off, making Ash howl in anger. He smashed his ex-girlfriend's head with a stick, then kicked open the door and walked out. When he went back to the house, he saw Mary, who was still breathing. Ash hurried over to her. Seeing that Mary was beyond saving, the two poured out their hearts to each other. Before long, Mary stopped breathing in Ash's arms. Ash didn't even have time to grieve when the imposter walked out again and mocked him relentlessly. Just then, Lacey and Kelly also arrived at the wooden cabin. They were stunned when they saw the two Ashes fighting each other, so they fired a shot into the air to make the two stop. Then they told the two to prove who the real Ash was. The Ash on the left said that Lacey had secretly used his mother's cosmetics when he was a kid. The Ash on the right said that Kelly had draped a sheet over herself to pretend to be a princess when she was little. After a heated argument, Lacey and Kelly opened fire on the Ash on the left, turning the imposter into a sieve on the spot. Ash lifted his chainsaw, ready to dismember the imposter in Mary's body, but before he could start, he heard shouts coming from outside the house. It turned out the three hikers were also lost and wanted to stay here for the night, saying they would leave at dawn. Ash knew the night wouldn't be peaceful, and that the hikers would most likely be in great danger if they stayed, so he refused their request. But Ash was also worried that the three would die in the forest, so he asked Lacey and Kelly to escort them out of the forest. After everyone left, Ash continued his work, and the room was soon splattered with blood. After finally finishing handling the imposter, Ash turned around only to find that Mary had already disappeared without a trace. Lacey and Kelly led the way in front, while the hiker group followed closely behind. Suddenly, a strange sound came from the woods. The two didn't think twice and raised their guns to shoot, only to realize they had hit a raccoon. As the group prepared to move on, the sound appeared again. Lacey and Kelly planned to do the same as before, but the man with the backpack refused. He said, "Do you want to kill wild animals too?" His girlfriend also chimed in, "What my boyfriend said is right, we shouldn't hurt these creatures casually." But before she could finish speaking, a large hand stretched out from her stomach. Everyone was stunned on the spot. It turned out to be Mary, possessed by the devil, who had found them. She even stuck her hands into the heads of two hikers and played a puppet game with them. Lacey and Kelly were terrified and didn't know what to do then. Mary threw the corpses at them, knocking the two to the ground, and then turned her attention to the last hiker. The latter was slapped and sent flying several meters away. Just as Mary was about to attack again, Lacey rushed over, but as soon as he raised his gun, Mary grabbed him by the neck. At this point, a figure fell from above and stopped Mary. It was Ruby. The girl took out a strangely shaped dagger. This dagger was exactly the exorcism dagger, recorded in the Book of the Dead. Any demon killed by this exorcism dagger would never be able to reincarnate. Ruby was about to stab Mary with the dagger, when Mary suddenly returned to her normal state, and begged Ruby desperately, but Ruby didn't fall for it and killed her on the spot. Lacey carried the body back to the wooden cabin. Ash didn't know Ruby, and within a few words, he was about to start a fight. Luckily, Kelly stopped them in time and made both calm down. Ash planned to bury the Book of the Dead in the basement to put an end to everything. This was the answer he had gotten from his dream. Ruby scolded him for being very stupid, but she still couldn't persuade the leading man, so she let him cut off the book's cover. Then Ruby held the book in her arms. "As long as I recite the incantation in the book, all this will be over." But the moment the incantation was spoken, the sky suddenly turned overcast with rain clouds. The ground also split open, as if an earthquake had struck. The cut-off cover of the Book of the Dead actually resonated with Lacey's necklace. Before Lacey could react, the cover stuck to his face. No matter how hard Kelly pulled, she couldn't get it off. But Ruby acted as if she didn't see it, and continued reciting the incantation. Ash suddenly felt something was wrong, and quickly closed the Book of the Dead. While grabbing the book, he asked Ruby if she knew what she was doing. The girl pushed Ash to the ground in one go, saying, "Of course I know, because I'm the author of this book." Now, the truth was finally revealed. Ruby wanted to release all the demons in the book, to rule the world. At this time, Mary, who had been controlled by the demon and resurrected, also came here and fought with Ash. Ruby seized the opportunity and pulled Lacey toward the basement. After Ash defeated Mary, he also prepared to go to the basement, but before he could go downstairs, he was caught up by the approaching devil. The latter crashed into the house, causing a violent tremor. Ash lost his balance and fell down on the spot. Unexpectedly, Ash fell into the RV. Ruby wanted to make a deal with Ash, saying that if he stopped interfering with her, she would let him live a prosperous rest of his life in Jackson City. Faced with such a tempting offer, Ash refused without hesitation and raised his gun to shoot her, but Ruby let out a loud roar. That pulled Ash back into the real world. Kelly was pulling at the basement door, but the devil had already taken control of the wooden cabin. No matter how hard she tried, the door just wouldn't open. Suddenly, the female hiker screamed loudly. Countless cockroaches had somehow crawled out of her pants. Kelly stepped forward and slapped her across the face, to snap her back to her senses. Kelly was about to go on trying to open the door, but the house suddenly attacked her and drove her outside. Kelly was very anxious. She herself seemed to be okay, but the hiker was most likely in grave danger. Everything in the house seemed to have been given life. The sofa crashed into the hiker. The girl ran as fast as she could, but the nails sticking out of the floor pierced her foot on the spot. Soon, the house had tortured her enough. It opened its door and spat out the hiker's corpse. On the other side, Ash slowly opened his eyes, trying to find Lacey. He saw Ruby reciting an incantation, while Lacey was spitting out a young evil spirit from his mouth. It looked very ferocious and terrifying. Ash knew Lacey was suffering unspeakably at this point, but to figure out what was really going on, he decided to wait and see what happened first. Unexpectedly, the young evil spirit that had just landed grew up quickly. It made a hole in the ceiling and fled the scene immediately. Ash was still confused, but the young spirit suddenly ran to his side. Although it looked terrifying, it had just been born, and all its abilities weren't yet fully developed. Ash killed the young spirit effortlessly, then he rushed in and shot Ruby 3 times, in a row on the spot. The woman was seriously injured but didn't die immediately. Lacey, already possessed by the cover, ran over and started fighting with Ash. Ruby's wounds were also healing rapidly. She picked up the exorcism dagger, restrained Ash, and prepared to cut off his face to make a new cover, but Ash snatched the dagger from her. Just as he was about to kill Ruby, the latter begged desperately, saying that if he killed her, there would be no second season. Moreover, Ruby promised that if Ash spared her life, she would let him spend the rest of his life in Jackson City, living a life of indulgence and carefreeness. This time, Ash hesitated, because he knew he had lived a very tiring life over the past few decades, and really wanted to find a place to spend his remaining years in peace. After a fierce internal struggle, Ash reached an agreement with Ruby, and so, the story of Ash vs. Evil Dead Season 1 comes to an end here. Ash vs. Evil Dead Season 1 was released in 2015. The Evil Dead franchise returned in the form of a TV series, with the plot continuing from the second and third installments of the Evil Dead films. The main character is played by Bruce Campbell, who portrayed the lead role in the original films. It tells the story of what happens 30 years after the leading man Ash fought against the army of demons, when the demons returned to the human world once again, and threatened to wipe out all humanity. So Ash becomes humanity's last hope. Ash has to pick up his chainsaw once again, but time takes its toll, and this time he has to find help. The plot still has the familiar vibe, and the visuals are still satisfying to watch. This is perhaps the core and soul of the Evil Dead franchise. Those who are familiar with it need no further introduction. For those who haven't watched it, I highly recommend checking out the original series. I guarantee you can forget many troubles and find joy in it. In short, Ash vs. Evil Dead Season 1 is a wonderful horror comedy that is well worth watching.